My priorities for 2018 are really the same priorities that I came to the legislature to try to get done in 2010, which is to create a California in which all children thrive. And so I introduced bills to support working families and their children. I'll continue to work with my colleague, Senator Ricardo Lara, on juvenile justice reform. Again, really trying to make sure that all children, regardless of immigration status, have an opportunity to have access to health care, education, to avoid the juvenile justice system, and to have an opportunity where they can make California their home and do well and be successful. I think the biggest obstacle our nation is facing right now, the fact that the mindset of the federal government has taken us backwards 50, 60 years. I'm happy to be a Californian right now in a progressive state led by progressive leaders who understand that that's not the direction this nation should go. A state that understands that our diversity is our greatest strength. So I think the biggest obstacle California is facing right now is the fact that we have to fight our own government, our own federal government, in order to continue to be a state that embraces and honors and respects its diversity. And that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge to us financially, as we strive to continue to expand access to health care services for all Californians, regardless of immigration status. And we're going to have to fight the federal government for that. We have to fight the federal government in terms of protecting all California residents. Our justice here in the California courts has asked the federal government to stay out of our court system. We have asked the federal government to stay out of our public school system. And so I think our biggest obstacle really is our federal government, and how horrible as a policymaker for me to say that, but it's what I truly fundamentally believe right now. They, Congress and the White House, are our biggest obstacle right now. I don't even know if I have the words to really express how distasteful, how racist, how classist I feel their actions have taken, how deceitful. When you look at the ways in which they are really trying to attack the core fabric of our nation, their denial about our own history, about the fact that all of us are immigrants to this country and have built the foundation upon which this government is based upon. That blatant denial is frightening. I guess there's no other way to put it. I have a 17-year-old son, and we've probably had more conversations about politics this year than ever before, even with a mother being in politics. And to have to try to explain it to a young person about fear, about not really knowing what comes next. The policies that are rolling out of there are so heinous, you just don't know what's coming next. And as a parent, as a policymaker, as a leader in my community, it's very unsettling. I represent Little Ethiopia in my district. And I was walking the block on Saturday, and I can't see the number of shop owners and residents who came out to tell me their personal story and their own fear about ICE. And because they have, kind of a centralized community, they feel even more vulnerable. Everyone has stories about people they believe to be ICE agents who are coming into the cafes, are coming into the shops, they think trying to perhaps pick up intel about shopkeepers and shoppers. This is America in 2018. How can we expect people to live that way? Absolutely, there's no question. I have to say my proudest moment to date as a California policymaker was the day after the national election when I saw the joint statement from the leader of both houses, Speaker Rendon and Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, when they talked about that this was not the kind of California, or this was not the kind of nation that they believe in, and how they were going to stand up and lead this legislature, and how we were going to fight to protect the rights of all California residents. And I've locked arms with them, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I'm proud to have joined with Senator Lara in co-authoring his bill this year to expand health care services to all immigrants, not just children. I'm proud of this governor who has stood up and went to Paris and said we're going to continue to fight and acknowledge that climate change is real. I'm proud of this Attorney General who has stood up and said we will file lawsuits and we will protect California residents. So I think California is in great hands. I am all the more committed to engaging my community, my entire community, in understanding electoral politics and making sure that we show up and show out in the midterms in 2018 and in 2020. We can never again allow our country to be held hostage by a minority viewpoint. And that's what it is. I fully support DACA, as evidenced by public statements I've made, by actions we've taken as chair of Budget Committee. Fully support the Dreamers. Again, I hope that the California members of Congress find the courage to do the right thing. Well, I'm a woman in America. I'm a woman who's worked my entire adult life. So I'm not surprised by the allegations. I currently serve on the subcommittee to the Joint Rules Committee that is developing for both houses, it's a bicameral committee, what our response will be as an institution. It's going to take hard work. We are having frank, honest conversations about who we are as an institution. I am happy that we're beginning to have meaningful conversations about the culture of the workplace and women in it. For me, it's not just sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a symptom of a larger issue around how women are treated and what our experience is in the workplace. So pay equity, family leave, the number of women in elected office, the number of women in leadership positions and staff, the number of chiefs of staff in this building that are female. It's a broader issue that I don't want to get lost in us merely responding to allegations that we know about already. The allegations we know about already are the mere tip of the iceberg. Underneath is a huge, bigger issue that I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both houses to really begin to rectify. California has the largest child poverty rate in the country. And when I look at the number of women that have now entered the workforce, the number of female-headed households, Nancy Pelosi said several years ago that, when women work, the nation works. And that same applies to California. We are over half of the population. And so when we look at pay equity, the challenges women face in the workplace, I'm committed to to continue to work to create a level playing field. Women of color, we recognize it in the legislature every year, the Women's Caucus, the pay equity issue for Black women and Latinas. and we earn pennies to the dollar for the same work of our male counterparts. There's no equity in that. And so if we're really going to have a meaningful conversation about a solid, healthy economy, making sure our children, that we acknowledge and address the 500,000 California children who live in deep poverty and the millions who live in poverty, we have to make sure that women have equal access to the California dream. And today I would argue that we don't. I think it's important for the Latino community and all immigrant communities to understand that there is power in numbers. And as we look at all underrepresented groups, I'm actively involved in this new movement. It's the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign. And the new resurgence of the Poor People's Campaign is cast in a broader tent. So it's not just people living in poverty, but it's all of us who are touched by the new attitude of the federal government. And so it's people of color, it's the immigrant community, it's the LGBT community, it's young people, it's poor people. And so I think we're all going to have to come together in a way that we haven't in decades to fight the power, as the song says, and develop bridges across language, across culture, across neighborhoods, to have meaningful conversation about the kind of California that we all want to live in. California that has high quality schools, that has parks and green space for our kids, the kind of California that you and I want to grow old in. I don't know yet, because I still have perhaps 4 more years to serve. Maybe the big apple is at the end of that time. What I know for sure now is, what I'm most proud of, is the work I've done with Senator Lara on criminal justice and juvenile justice reform. When we get letters, when we see witnesses in committees, the young people who were falsely accused, falsely imprisoned, almost all of them black or brown or poor, who now have a shot, who can look at me and look at Senator Lara and say, you know, they're just like me. Maybe I too can make something different of my life. When I think about the mothers on CalWorks and their children who will benefit from the work I've done on CalWorks to try to honor and respect them, to no longer criminalize poverty, to no longer criminalize black and brown children who've grown up in poverty. That kind of attitude change and seeing people feel a part of a system as opposed to being a victim of a system, those are the kinds of things that make me most proud. And I don't know what the ultimate thing will be that I'll be most proud of. It could always be the next bill, the next budget, the next opportunity. I don't know yet. I just think it's important, like I said before, that this is shame on us if we don't take advantage of this opportunity to organize and build coalition differently. Shame on us. Senator Lara and I talk about the triggers that motivated us to become the activists that we first were before we ran for office. We both talk about various ballot propositions early on, 187, 209, and others. And I hope that the next generation of political community elected leaders will come out of these dark times we're living in now, that this will be their 187 and 209 moment, like it was for Senator Lara and I as young college students who learned how to organize and became politically involved in reaction to those racist policies. So if we miss this opportunity for young people to understand, for the immigrant community to understand the role they must play in being engaged civically and politically, then shame on all of us. We've got to use this as a moment in time in history to become activists once again.